So since beginning this time, we have had a really bad habit. This wrong conception that has this appearance that everything around us, everything we see, everything we smell, taste, touch, our very own aggregates, everything that makes up our world, we see as separate, external, independent, setting itself up, having its own essence. We see it as truly existent. That's the appearance. And we believe it. And on the basis of that, we apprehend the aggregates that we have and we grasp them as me, grasp them as mine. Out of that, we have the idea that our happiness is the most important thing in the entire universe, and we do anything to get it. So our craving and greed arises, and then if anything crosses our path to get in the way of that, then hatred follows instantly. And all the other afflicted mind states, we act out of those, we create causes that leave imprints on our minds, and that continue to keep us in a prison. A prison of unsatisfactory conditions that is born completely out of this wrong conception. Bad habit, a wrong view. And of course we don't know that that's what we have because we've always had it. And everybody else has it too. Everybody that is in the same prison with us. Same bad habit. Same wrong conception. Only each one of them thinks they're the center of the universe. For us tonight, somehow in our past, we've created a tremendous amount of virtue in spite of this wrong conceptions that have led to us to hear teachings that say there's a way out of this prison. And the Buddha, in his great compassion, taught this. His disciples have taught it. Their disciples have taught it. So uncounted numbers of beings have been able to hear these teachings and open the door of the wrong conceptions that we have, raising a little doubt, perhaps, moving towards, as we study more, understand more, to something like a correct assumption. Opening the door so that we may have an absolutely incontrovertible inference. And then a direct perception that teaches us that what the Buddha was teaching was absolutely true. So whatever level we're at right now, we have enough to think the Buddha might have been telling the truth. So tonight, as we explore these particular teachings, think about our aspiration to become completely liberated from this prison, to change this wrong view, to change this wrong conception. And just as the Buddha did it, pursued it and taught it out of great compassion, knowing that everybody was in the same prison with him. And just as all the lineage teachers, especially I think of the Nalanda masters who really perfected these reasonings, passed them to the Kadampa masters who passed them on to future generations through Tibet. And here we are in the USA or wherever you are watching this. Unbelievable compassion that lets us even hear these teachings to try to open the door ourselves. So we'll do this tonight with a wish to be able to free ourselves and every single being from the prison that we find ourselves in based on this wrong conception, grasping at true existence. And as we plant the seeds for this, may we become completely awakened and lead all beings to that state too. When we were doing the meditation, a lyric from a song came to mind, which is not an unusual occurrence, but it was pertinent. There's a singer-songwriter in Canada named Jane Seabury who is really quite a wonderful songwriter, but one of her lyrics says, "Every day you gaze upon the sunset with such love and intensity. It's almost as if you could only crack the code, you would finally understand what this all means." And I'm thinking these teachings are a real support in helping us to finally crack the code to understand what this all means. That's not what Jane is singing about, I have to say. Her next line is totally about clinging to samsara, so we won't go there. But boy, if we could only crack the code, we'd finally understand what this all means. And so this little step-by-step teachings of how we go from wrong conception to direct yogic perception of the nature of reality is like the code cracker. So, I don't know, I find it very exciting. Very exciting to do these teachings. So, we're going to take a stab at the last part of the quiz. I don't know if we ever acknowledged the actual quiz writer, which was, although taken from the words of Venerable Thupten Chodron, it was very craftily pulled from those teachings by Venerable Thupten Saltram. So I want to acknowledge that about her. So last week we had a little hanging thread on subsequent cognizers, right? So I'd like to just snip that thread quickly and get on to the rest. We're going to look at correct assumers and doubt and wrong conceptions, wrong consciousnesses. But first, let's do these questions. The second moment of clairvoyance, knowing another person's mind, is an example of what type of cognizer?
Mental direct perceiving. The subsequent cognizer.
The subsequent cognizer of a mental direct perceiver. Bingo. The second moment of the uninterrupted path of seeing is an example of what type of cognizer? The subsequent cognizer of a yogic direct perceiver. Then there's the debate about whether such a thing exists or not, but we talked about that pretty extensively last week, I think. And, basically the conclusion of it, was it Lottie Rinpoche? Who was it? Anyway, said, yeah, yeah, there is a subsequent cognizer. We can get into that later if we get there. And I want to go on to correct assumers because I'm finding this part extremely interesting. So we're going to do these questions in a little bit different order. It's more logical to me to kind of go at it that way. I don't know if you have them numbered. No, I don't think they're numbered. Yeah, okay, Venerable Tarpa numbered them, but they're not numbered out there, right? So I have 32. We're going to do it, and if you have the numbers, we're going to do 32, 33, 30, and 31 in that way. So what is the definition of a correct assumer?
In other words, that does not get at an object with respect to which superimpositions have been eliminated, although it adheres one pointedly to the phenomenon which is its principal object of engagement.
Here's the definition of a correct assumer. Could you hear that? Probably not. I'll try it. A knower that does not get at an object with respect to which superimpositions have been eliminated, although it adheres one-pointedly to the phenomenon, which is its principal object of engagement, is the definition of a correct assumer. Geshe-Rapton says this. The correct assumer is a fallible cognizer, since it is unable to induce any certainty or eliminate any misconceptions about its object. Right? So although a correct assumption is not genuine comprehension of its object, nevertheless, it is said to, quote, comprehend its object merely by means of either an experiential or nominal mental image. So we may hear a description about it, or we may have been there and, recall it. But it's still not completely comprehending. So his example is this. Imagine that someone tells you that past and future lives exist. Because you have faith in this person, you may subsequently believe it to be so. This is an example of a correct assumption that comprehends its object merely by means of a nominal image. The statement that was uttered was true, but one's comprehension of it, this concealed entity, that is past and future lives, lacked any perfect reason or direct experience as its basis. So somewhere later he says, so all you really heard was a sound. And on the basis of your confidence in the person, you accept that. But there's nothing solid for this to sit on. So this is a really important point. A correct assumption is important because it gives us a firm ground to establish a perfect reason. It is the substantial cause for an inference. A correct assumption is the substantial cause of an inferential consciousness. Whereas the minds that apply the reasoning to the subject and verify that it's congruent with the predicate, the mind that's working out the reasoning through the syllogism are merely contributory causes. So though it's a fallible condition, it's still beneficial and wholesome state of mind that should be developed. So, I think after listening to teachings, I was a little bit like, I don't know, it's maybe just my personality. Not so dismissive of correct assumption, but thinking that, I don't have so much correct assumption for no reason, mostly. But this was very reassuring somehow, to think that a correct assumption is the substantial cause for having an inferential understanding. That's great. That's really great. That was Geshe-Rapton. Yeah. So that takes us to the next question. What are the three types of correct assumers? Without a reason?
Without ascertaining the reason.
Without ascertaining the reason? Depending on a facsimile of a reason. Very good. Hi, Maitri. I'm right there. That's exactly where I am. Okay, somebody define for us while I ask Maitri to move. Can someone explain what it means to do this without a reason? To have a correct assumption without a reason?
It's just like you can say anybody says anything to you, and depending on who they are, you believe them.
Yeah. Based merely upon another person uttering an unqualified proposition. If someone says sound is impermanent and you accept the statement at face value, then this is a reasonless, correct assumption. So, can you think of your own Dharma beliefs that are reasonless, correct assumptions? Reasonless. Can you think of any of your own Dharma beliefs or ideas that are reasonless, correct assumptions?
I was thinking about the story of Bodhanath Stupa.
Uh-huh.
When I first heard Lamazopa Rinpoche tell it, I was like blown away. Wow! But upon reflection, I was like, actually, you could just think it's a legend.
Uh-huh.
I think a big part of it was just hearing it from Lamazopa Rinpoche sitting in the Kopan monastery.
Uh-huh.
Wow! wow, these people made these prayers, that's why there was this stupa, that's why Buddhism spread to Tibet, that's how it spread to America. I am connected to this stupa.
Right.
Then I look back, I'm like, it could be a fairy tale,
Right. Right. So this beautiful story that Lama Zopa Rinpoche told about the founding of the Bodhinath Stupa, that really wowed you when you heard it. But later on reflection you think maybe it's just a legend, or I don't know. But anyway, you have no other way of substantiating the story. So yeah, correct belief without reason. Even though you have a very good source. In Zopa Rinpoche, of course, but yeah, very good example. Okay, what does it mean to have a correct assumption without ascertaining the reason?
You're still getting a reason. You're starting to process, but you don't have the full understanding of it.
Right.
So it's got sound is impermanent because it's being created. I mean, that's a fairly good reason, but whether it's the reason that's going to be able to get the mind to ascertain that exactly for what it means.
Yeah.
So you're getting close, but you're still not there.
Yeah. Venerable Children said it's without ascertaining the reason. So sound is impermanent because it's a product. Yes, that's a very good reason, but you don't know what that really means. Or, yeah, sound is a product, so there's the presence of the reason in the subject, but you don't understand the pervasion. If it's a product, it has to be impermanent. So you can say it, but you haven't examined it, and you haven't then realized it. So can you think of some of your own Dharma assumptions that are this type? That you hold this correct assumption, but without ascertaining the reason.
I have had one this week getting ready for this class, is that the kindness of others is a cause for compassion.
Mm-hmm. The kindness of others is a cause for compassion. Yeah.
I mean, I have all the, the reasons are there, but whether I ascertain that or not, I don't have it in my mind 90% of the time, so I don't,
Yeah, we have the reasons, but have we examined it in a way that we really get at it? I mean, I had kind of a shocking one. What about death is certain? The time of death is uncertain. Nothing helps at the time of death except the Dharma. No, it's not a doubt. It's a correct assumption, but it is. I can't say that it's a correct assumption without ascertaining the reason. I mean, it's not totally reasonless, but or if I did, things would be different, right? So. How about depending on, what's the third? Oh yeah, we talked about it. Depending on a facsimile of a reason, can somebody explain this?
Well, the reason is irrelevant to what you're examining.
Right. So the facsimile of a reason means that the reason is just like totally irrelevant. So Venerable Children's example is, so it's true that sound is impermanent, and it's true, that depending on a facsimile of a reason is a mind that thinks sound is impermanent from the reason of being an object of comprehension, or because it's a phenomenon. Sound is impermanent because it's a phenomenon. That actually sounds quite nice. Right. No, it doesn't explain it. Yeah, it's true that sound is impermanent, and it's true that sound is a phenomenon, but being phenomenon is irrelevant to the fact of being impermanent. So do we have Dharma ideas? Our own Dharma understanding that's a correct assumer that depends on the facsimile of a reason.
Oh, a goofy one.
Yeah.
There is no inherently existent self because a mental continuum cannot cast a shadow.
That's a goofy one. There is no inherently existent self because a mental continuum cannot cast a shadow. I like that. Anybody else? Would we know? I mean, if we held a Dharma correct assumption, but it was on a facsimile of reason, would we actually even know that?
Not probably later.
Yeah, later you might have the realization. Oh, actually, that's interesting. I didn't really think about looking back and going, thinking about.
That's what I was thinking of.
Uh-huh. Well, it may be worth checking out. And actually, it might be a nice exercise to look back at, at things that we know that we understand now or understand better now than we did before, and see what kind of facsimile of reasons we might have had for those things, because I think that would also be reassuring. It's like, oh yes, we can learn.
I was wondering what you think about, I didn't divide mine into looking at which of these it came from, and I actually don't know for sure, but one thing I think is a correct assumer for me is that in Buddhism there's a way to work with every state of mind. That's something correct.
So that's a correct assumption. In Buddhism, there's a way to work with every state of mind.
Yeah, that comes up.
And that's a correct assumption?
I have, yes, that's what something I believe.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
I think it's a correct fit for what is a correct assumption.
Yeah, correct assumer.
But I'm thinking that it's probably number 2.
Yeah.
Just because when I think about every different states of mind I've ever had, I think there's like a remedy. Not that I can always use them, but I think that the remedy is there. But I haven't really ascertained that.
Right. So the question is, the point is, in Buddhism can work with every state of mind, basically, and it's more like a correct assumer without ascertaining the reason, because you have some experience of it, but you haven't really realized that probably for every mind state or whatever. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's probably true. Yeah, yeah.
John Owen has one. Things are empty because they are perceived by the mind.
Things are empty because they are perceived by the mind. That's the irrelevant one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The reason
Oh. Things are empty because they can be perceived by the mind. They are perceived by the mind. I think that's irrelevant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Things that are perceived by the mind that aren't.
But just don't prove it.
Yeah.
Yeah, this doesn't prove it. Okay, good. Then that leads us to have a better understanding of how to do this true and false question. Wisdom arisen from hearing is a correct assumer, true or false? Got 1 true, 2 truths, 3 truths, 1 false, 2 falses, a bunch of abstentions. True. Wisdom arisen from hearing is a correct assumer.
Oh, wisdom.
Let's do the second one. Is a consciousness arisen from hearing a correct assumer? 1 yes, 1 no, a no, a no, a no, a no, mostly no's. That is right. It is not.
That's because first it's an ear consciousness, and then later.
The key word was wisdom.
Yeah, key word is wisdom.
For the next question?
Yeah, Ladi Rinpoche says all consciousnesses arisen from hearing are correctly assuming, not all consciousnesses arisen from hearing are correctly assuming ones. For example, if someone tells you that sound is permanent, and you generate a consciousness assenting to this, you have a wrong consciousness. You have no wisdom. Okay, so that makes sense to us. Any wisdom from hearing, however, is a correctly assuming consciousness. So, I also raised my eyebrow at this point, and I asked Venerable Children, what is this wisdom?
There is wisdom from hearing.
There is. There is wisdom from hearing, wisdom from reflecting or thinking, wisdom from meditating. And Venerable said, to the extent that you're apprehending the object correctly, that is wisdom. That is wisdom. So it's not just the wisdom realizing emptiness is not the only kind of wisdom, and it's not even just the wisdom that realizes or understands the cause and effect or the result of our actions. But that there is a wisdom, and I don't know which of the Tibetan words this would apply to. Does anybody? Of the 2 wisdom words that does arise from hearing. So, if we understand the object correctly, apprehending the object correctly, then wisdom arises. Okay. I found a little bit more interesting stuff about correct assumers. Oh, we're not going to get through the cool stuff I wanted to do tonight. Already I can tell. Oh well. A correct assuming consciousness is, for example, that a knowledge that arises when something is explained to you. At such a time there is first generated an ear consciousness hearing what was said. That induces an awareness thinking it is such and such. And this awareness, which is based only on a sound generality, is a correctly assuming consciousness. It is. Should you think about it again and again and finally ascertain decisively independence on a correct sign or a good reason, that mind would be an inferential prime cognizer. So you can see how it's the substantial cause there. So let's keep up those correct assumers. Keep thinking about them. Okay, doubt. We're going to look at these in a different order too. But first, who has the definition of doubt?
I'll go right to Geshe Lapton. He's called it a decision. It's defined as a mental factor that by its own strength wavers between two alternatives concerning its object.
Defined as a mental factor that by its own strength wavers between two objects. That's the Geshe Lapton definition. The definition from our text is, a knower which by its own power has qualms in two directions, is the definition of a doubt. Just a little interesting thing. You know, Venerable at one point said in the teachings that, especially with these low-rig things, that you get different answers from different people. And we kind of saw this in our Jeffrey teaching this week. So Ladi Rinpoche also argues with this definition. He says that the by way of its own power indicates that it's a mental factor, which we talked about. This is the mental factor of doubt. But he says the mental factor of doubt is necessarily afflicted because it's in that list of 6 root afflictions, and that some doubts are virtuous. So he'd rather see the by its own power removed, which would indicate that this is doubt in general. So that's not the way we learned it. But I thought it was an interesting argument, and we'll get to what he means by some doubt is virtuous in a minute. All right, this will take us to the quiz question. What are the 3 ways that doubt is divided?
Tending toward the fact.
Tending toward the fact?
Not tending toward.
Not tending toward the fact. Both equally. Okay. An example of a doubt tending toward the fact.
The Vajrasattva practice purifies negativities in the mind stream.
The Vajrasattva practice purifies negativities in the mind stream. That's a personal doubt tending towards the fact. Yeah, good example. Ladi Rinpoche again said it's close to being factually concordant, this doubt tending toward the fact. And this is also really reassuring. If one doesn't meet with bad circumstances, it will become factually concordant. But if one meets with bad circumstances, like a wrong teacher or bad friends that lead your not so convinced mind in the wrong direction, it will not. However, most cases of doubt tending toward the fact do become factually concordant minds. That is reassuring. Now we need to make sure that where we have doubt, we need to lean it in that direction, but that's something. Okay, what's an example of doubt not tending toward the fact? Venerable Samten?
I am not sure that purification practices have any impact on the seeds and negativities in a mental continuum.
I am not sure that purification practices have any impact on the seeds and negativities in a mental continuum. Yeah? Anybody ever had that doubt? Yeah. Ladi Rinpoche. Unless very good conditions are met, this kind of doubt mostly turns into a mind which does not accord with the fact. A wrong consciousness. So fortunately, if you're here doing your prostrations every day, twice a day, whether you have this doubt in whichever direction, you're in good conditions. Right? So this is what he says. If you meet with a good teacher or read a good book, it is still possible to generate a factually concordant mind. So it's possible. And then both equally, an example?
I've got one, like, I've been thinking about this lately, is they say that with tantric practice for a sharp faculty student, awakening is possible in one lifetime. Personally, since I don't have an experience, I'm not too sure.
Say that again. They say that.
They say that sharp faculty
student
Tantra
practicing Tantra
can generate the awakened mind within one lifetime.
become a Buddha in one lifetime.
But I'm not too sure about it.
But you're not too sure, but it's possible. But it's possible. Maybe yes, maybe no. Yeah. Yeah. Where is the, there's something in, oh yeah, many examples of neutral doubt. Vadi Rinpoche says, wondering whether, this is off Dharma, but wondering whether the person you're going to see will be there or not. Wondering whether it will rain today or not. Wondering if you put enough sugar in your tea or not. I love that example. Right? So this is what he says about this afflicted doubt, whether doubt is an affliction or not. A virtuous doubting consciousness would be one that wonders whether or not the effects of action exist and thinks they probably do. I mean, that's just like the example you gave. It's a virtuous doubt. There definitely is virtue in doubt. He says, Aryadeva says, so the Aryadeva's famous verse, those with little merit do not even doubt this doctrine. Entertaining just a doubt tears to tatters worldly existence. Right? That's the very famous Aryadeva quote that says, even you have a doubt about the emptiness of inherent existence, cyclic existence is shredded. And so, Vadi Rinpoche says, if this were non-virtuous, it would be quite strange that it could tear cyclic existence apart. That's a very good kind of point. So, but he also says, and this I think is very something to take to heart, doubting consciousnesses are among the worst types of mind. If one is traveling along a road constantly wondering, is this the right road or not, it is difficult to arrive at a destination. I mean, I've done this. I have a terrible spatial memory. And I've been driving and, suddenly not sure where I am, turn the car around, go back. In fact, I did this with you one night, didn't we? When we had to do that roundabout in Spokane. It was dark and foggy. We drove this way, and no, this isn't right. Drove this way. No, I'm not sure this is right. We drove this way. I'm not sure this is right. Like, if you keep that up, you will never get anywhere. So he says it's the same thing if you're on the path to liberation and you're constantly wondering, is this the path to liberation? Is this what I'm supposed to do? You can just see us drive. We'll never make any progress. So that's how doubt pervades or influences our practice. So it's one of the worst minds, he says. And so even the virtuous ones, we can try to move on to correct assumption, I think, as quickly as we can.
I think it really gets, at least I get into trouble when I start thinking things in my practice are taking too long. That's where doubt comes in, when I start putting on these, these perceived timelines of how far I should be going and how I should be doing. Anytime I don't trust the process itself, then that's where doubt comes in.
So by thinking that you should be further along the path.
Well, the wrong conclusion then helps, feed the doubt.
Right. That's when doubt springs up. Yeah, that's useful to see. The environment, the mental environment in which it arises, didn't we?
I was just going to say too, if we don't have trust in our teacher and we have doubt, then we really get in deep doo-doo.
Yeah, if we don't trust in our teacher and then we have doubt, then we're in trouble. Yeah, so relying, so also, this thing about taking testimony at face value, if you have a good relationship and you've checked out your teacher and know that your teacher is well qualified, that's actually fine. But if we have doubts about the teacher itself or the quality of the teaching or whatever, then yeah, you're right. Really in trouble. Really in trouble. So then this next question, think of some examples of the doubts you have. We kind of have done that. Is there anything else that anybody brought up?
Well, I wondered, your example about the one lifetime, it says in here do they have a kind of valid reasoning behind it? And I was wondering if you knew what your reasoning was.
We were talking about the doubt that was equal.
Yeah.
So on one hand, that's what I've been taught, and I trust the reliable sources. But in my own mind, where I am in my practice, I'm not too sure.
Mm-hmm.
So there's reason on one side of the doubt, but then my personal experience, I'm not in a correct assumption.
Yeah, and because the sentence says, give yourself a consequence that feels uncomfortable, it's going to let you let go of your wrong view. I'm assuming that this is a question about doubt tending to the wrong conclusion.
Yeah. So, for example, with the ones I gave, the thing I would say to myself is that, and your Ben will say this too, is that, so you think the Buddha and your teachers are lying to you?
Oh, very good. So based on the one about purification?
Yeah.
One of your reasonings is that the challenge, the absurd consequence that Venerable Children gives back to you is, do you think the Buddhas and your teachers are lying to you? That's a good one. Boy, that works for quite a lot of them, doesn't it? That's very good. Refute your doubt with this question. Do you think the Buddha lied to you? Do you think the Buddha lied to everybody? His Holiness the Dalai Lama is lying? Do you think Venerable Children is lying to you? Yeah, that kind of stops you in your tracks, doesn't it? Very useful. Thank you. That's good. There are other questions too about how you would go about changing this doubt. I mean, that wasn't on the quiz, but I was also asking that question. But that's a very good one. The one I came up with is somehow, I don't understand how Maitreya is the author of the Sublime Continuum or any of the Asanga text. I don't get that. That's a doubt. I definitely have. I mean, it's an equal doubt. I don't disbelieve it, but I don't get it. So I could investigate the scriptural authority that says this is so, and I've never done that. So those are some other things we can do, is kind of, rely on the sources. It's kind of the same thing. Do you think Maitreya would lie to you? Okay, anything else on doubt? Let's go on to the wrong consciousness. First, what is its definition?
A knower which is mistaken with regard to its engaged object.
A knower which is mistaken with regard to its engaged object. Yes, and what is an engaged object? The main object the mind is engaged with. The focal object. The main object. Yeah. The main object. Yeah, focal object. This is Venerable Children's definition, or maybe re-explanation. It's a cognizer that engages with its object in an erroneous way. It doesn't engage with the object as it exists, but it cognizes something else instead. It's not just that it doesn't get it, it gets something else.
Yes, of course.
That's really wrong. To know it's a wrong consciousness, we have to understand how things actually do exist. We have to get used to knowing that we're wrong so we can change it. We hate being wrong. That's a little personal hurdle. That's a wrong consciousness right there, right?
If you're wrong, I'm right.
Right. If I'm wrong, I'm somehow a bad person, or, that's a screwed up syllogism too. When wrong consciousnesses are divided, there are two. What are they?
Conceptual and non-conceptual.
Conceptual and non-conceptual. What's an example of a conceptual wrong consciousness?
Conceptual non-consciousness?
Mm-hmm. I know it asks for generally what's an example, but I'm asking specifically what is an example of a conceptual wrong consciousness?
Seeing things as inherently existent.
Yeah.
Coming from their own side.
Yeah. Consciousnesses that apprehend the horns of a rabbit. Everybody's favorite example. Consciousnesses apprehending a self of persons. What about a example that's not kind of a textbook example?
Planets revolve around the Earth.
Yeah. Yeah.
What was it?
Planets and stars revolve around
The Earth.
All of the four distortions also, we should put those out as examples really. Seeing, thinking that impermanent phenomena are actually permanent, seeing things that are actually foul by nature as beautiful, so forth and so forth and so forth. So here's a little bit about conceptual wrong consciousnesses. That many of them are innate. That's an important thing to remember. Many of our wrong consciousnesses are innate. That are conceptions. We think, when we hear the word conception, often we think it's about verbal, mental image kind of, well, it is mental images, but it's labels. But conceptions can be much more subtle than that, and even babies and animals have them. So it's this innate conceptual consciousnesses. The conceptual wrong consciousnesses are really serious. Within them are all the wrong views that we have, all the mental factors that disturb our minds. These are the ones that put us through hell every day. It's not those nice correct assumers that are making us mad at each other, making us tell each other off, making us get irritated about whatever, tea, water, lunch. Conceptual wrong consciousnesses. Okay, what are the non-conceptual wrong consciousnesses? What about them? There are two types. What are they? Non-conceptual wrong consciousnesses, two types.
Sensamental.
Sensamental. The quiz only asked an example of one, but can we find an example of each? Sense consciousnesses.
Seeing two moons.
Yes, wrong sense consciousnesses are, for example, seeing two moons, or that which sees no mountains appearing as blue. I don't know whoever did that, but a rope is a snake.
Snake is a rope.
Yeah. That's when we see it that way. Yeah. Okay, and what's a wrong mental consciousness? Example?
About the stuff that happens in our dreams.
Stuff that happens in our dreams. Stuff that happens in our dreams. I'm going to skip the four adventitious causes of temporary error for the sense consciousnesses and say, no, I'm not. I'm going to do this kind of quickly. So we got four adventitious causes of temporary error of the sense consciousness, just to review them. The cause of the error exists in the object is the first one. And the example of that was the sparkler, that we spin round and round and round. It looks like a ring of fire.
Or a propeller blade.
Yeah, or the propeller blade. The second one is the cause of error exists in the basis of perception. So it's a defect in the dominant condition, which Venerable cited as the visual or the sense power. Actually, Geshe Rapton says it's a problem with the sense organ. But somewhere in there, sense power or sense organ, an example would be like cataracts that temporarily or adventitiously obscure that sense consciousness.
So he's saying that sense organ more a grosser form.
Yeah, he's saying
not a
it.
subtle form.
Yeah, that's what he's saying. But again, different versions. Number 3, cause of the error exists in the place or abode, which sounded really weird to me, but Geshe Rabson's translation is the source of deception exists in the situation. That makes more sense. So the example is like the train moving.
Oh, right.
You're on the train and then, I had that recently. I'm sitting on the train and I thought we were moving. I thought we'd been moving for a long time.
It's a train moving past us.
Right, we were on that track for a long time. It was wishful thinking. And then number 4, cause of the error exists in the immediately preceding condition. So that's like saying when the mind is completely disturbed by certain thoughts or emotions, like seeing red when you're angry. And we agreed that none of us had ever had that experience. But Ayatollah described it, and Geshe Rabten talks about how, if your heart gets to beating and then blood kind of flushes your head, and and you keep going, that it can tend that even the blood vessels of the eyes, quite physically, get what's the word? Engorged is too big for a blood vessel in the eye, but like that, and it can tint your vision to red. So. Conversely, Geshe Rabten says, when the mind is under the influence of attachment and desire, objects appear to be especially attractive and pleasing when they are not. Oh! So, that's where the mirage comes in, like seeing water on the road, but actually it's a mirage. So from the wrong mental consciousnesses, the only example they gave are the dream consciousnesses. So I don't know. And this is when all the sources that I looked at, all cognitions, this is Rabten, all cognitions that occur in a dream are mental and non-conceptual. In addition, they are mistaken because they apprehend their objects as really existent. So for all of us who really try to live by our dreams, they're wrong consciousnesses. According to this, they are wrong mental consciousnesses, but by that they're mistaken. So just to run through then, so that's the quiz, right? So I wanted to go through the steps again to understand, how this puts together. So if we start to, let's say we're trying to realize emptiness and cut the root of cyclic existence, we start off as ignorant beings because we are grasping at true existence. When we start to hear teachings, we go from these wrong consciousnesses to a doubt that's inclined to the wrong conclusion. I don't know if this is real. I don't know. We keep hearing teachings, we keep thinking about it, and we go to a doubt that is equal. Well, maybe not. I don't know. We keep going to teachings. The message here is keep going to teachings. And think about it. And we come to a doubt inclined to the right conclusion. I don't know, but I think maybe this makes sense. And that's really the moment that we're starting to head in the right direction with this. Then we go to the correct assumer. Yeah, okay, I think it's true. Things are empty of inherent existence. I don't know why. I can't explain the reasons. Or even I can say some of the words, I haven't ascertained these reasonings at all. But we keep at it. We keep at it, we keep at it, we keep at it. And then, as she said, I think it's quite accurate and something to remember. We stay at the level of correct assumer for a long, long time. We may kind of waver into doubt. So, part of our work might be to really analyze where are our doubts and try to move ourselves towards correct assumers. But then we're at correct assumers for a long time because it takes a great amount of wisdom to really ascertain anything, really, with this kind of reasoning. So after a while, we actually get a true inference. We get that the self is empty of true existence because it rises dependently. We really see that the self is a dependent arising, and anything that arises dependently has to be free of true existence. Then, when we get this kind of inferential understanding, then we meditate on this with the unity of serenity and insight. So who knows how long that's going to take to get either. But the more we do that on the conceptual understanding or on the conceptual appearance of emptiness, it gets weaker and weaker and weaker and weaker until there's the yogic direct perceiver of emptiness. So it is seen, not visually, not with an ordinary mental consciousness, but with the yogic direct perceiver. And then we keep seeing it over and over and over and over as the power of that wisdom gets stronger and stronger and stronger to eliminate the afflictions and then ultimately even the obscurations to omniscience. Then we are Buddhas. So, I mean, talk about cracking the code. This is it. And if we put this next to what we learned from On the Grounds and Paths, we just got the map out of the prison, guys. I mean, it's not like we haven't been working on this for a while. I want to do a really quick thing on syllogisms. Yeah.
The engaged object, the synonym is apprehended.
Well, I took this directly from what she said. So we'll go back and look. So the engaged object, synonym is apprehended object. Object of engagement, the focal object. I'll go look. You know, it might have been, I took it from Rapton actually.
He has,
Yeah.
For him, the word he uses instead of engaged object is principal object.
Okay.
For apprehended.
Well, apprehended makes actually more sense in that definition than focal.
Yeah, focal is more the synonym there is the object of observation.
Yeah, apprehended makes more sense. Okay, that's a correction. The engaged object is the apprehended object, although I'll look it up because I got it. Yeah.
They're different words.
Yeah.
Jugular.
I'll go back to the text. Okay, thank you. Yes.
And I just wanted to say, you know, when we talk about that whole path from non-consciousness,
Uh huh.
I was always wondering where fear fits in that schema. And it always sounds so smooth.
Mhm.
But I remember reading in Reflections on Reality somewhere that at some point I think fear arises.
Mm.
And maybe when you have doubt, inclined to the correct conclusion or correct assessment. You know, just the idea that there is no self-sufficient person.
Right. I think, yeah, for sure. For sure.
You just want to U-turn at that moment and say, okay, this is perfect.
Definitely. I think that it's very possible that fear about that, can enter, not when you have wrong consciousnesses, but I think at any point that you have kind of an insight even about, oh wow, this emptiness thing might be really true, it shakes you up. So yeah, if you meet with bad friends and bad teachers, right. And that's where our practice of fortitude comes in. Actually, right there. This was playing with the idea of how we turn our correct assumptions into incontrovertible realizations by applying the syllogistic process. So, if we start with something that we all know, I have a precious human life because I am endowed with 8 freedoms and fortunes. I mean, I don't know. Do you feel like you have a precious human life? Is that an inferential understanding, or would you say you're on a correct assumption there? Correct assumption. So if we put it through these paces, if we look first, so we have the subject is I, predicate is precious human life, thesis, I have a precious human life. Why? Because I have the freedoms and fortunes. Presence of the reason in the subject. I am endowed with freedoms and fortunes. Is that correct? The pervasion. Is someone endowed with the freedoms and fortunes necessarily have a human life? Precious human life.
Yes.
As a correct assumption.
Yes.
But we don't actually know that yet. Right? So we have to look further. Next. I have a precious human life because I am free of being a hell being, a hungry ghost, an animal, a god, or a demigod. So we have to run through that. Subject, I, predicate, precious human life, thesis. I have a precious human life. Reason. Because I am free of being a hell being, a hungry ghost, an animal, a god, or a demigod. Well, yes, I am free of being a hell being, a hungry ghost, an animal, a god, or a demigod, but does the pervasion hold up? Does being free of being a hell being, etc., necessarily equal a precious human life. No, it doesn't. It might be a factor. How do I know I am free of being a hell being, a hungry ghost, an animal, a god, or a demigod? How do I know?
Well, you don't have the qualities of any of those beings.
Would you say that's a direct perception?
That's a correct assumption.
I think it's a direct perception. I can look down and tell I am free of being those things. That I think is incontrovertible. So this I know, but it doesn't prove what I'm trying to prove, my original thesis. Okay.
I know what I'm not.
Yeah. Next one. I'm skipping ahead. I have a precious human life because I am born at a time when a Buddha has come and taught the Dharma.
Yes.
Okay. Subject is I. Predicate, precious human life. Thesis, I have a precious human life. Why? Being born at a time when a Buddha has come and taught the Dharma. Okay. Presence of the subject and the reason.
I was born in, yes,
Yeah?
I was born in a time when the Buddha taught.
I am born at a time when the Buddha has taught the Dharma. True? Yes. Pervasion.
Don't necessarily then have a precious human life.
Right. Does a person born at a time when a Buddha has come and taught the Dharma necessarily have a precious human life?
No.
No. No. But it could be a factor proving my first thesis, right? How do I know I am born at a time when a Buddha has come and taught the Dharma?
Because we still have the teachings of the Dharma.
How do we know?
Because the monastic teachers is past, has to be person.
So we still have the teachings. We know that because the monastic lineage has to be passed person to person, and there are still monastics around. We can see that with our own eyes.
And the authority that says that these are his teachings.
So we have a scriptural authority. So it's an inference, although the thing about monastics, actually, I hadn't thought about. That might be a direct perception. So we have a couple of reliable sources. So if you go through all these, 8 freedoms, 10 fortunes, yeah, I always get them backwards. 8 freedoms, 10 fortunes, and go through each one of these syllogisms one by one by one by one by one, the pervasion actually won't hold up.
If they're by themselves.
If they're by themselves. But if we come back to, I have a precious human life because of having all 18 freedoms and fortunes, then subject, I, predicate, precious human life, reason, because I have all 18 freedoms and fortunes. The pervasion work?
Yes.
A person who has all 18 freedoms and fortunes has a precious human, necessarily has a precious human life.
Yes.
That's powerful. That is really a powerful kind of realization. So it was just kind of like playing with, if we could apply this kind of reasoning to really examine the things that we, quote, know really well. I mean, how many times have you gone through this in the Lam Rim? But how much do we really know it? This process of reasoning really is the ticket, I think, to helping us come to a much, much more profound understanding. And in this way, if you have an incontrovertible realization of this fact, then we will use our precious human life really, really well, because we'll believe it. We'll know it. We will have reasoned it, and the inference will just like be so brilliantly clear in our minds that we can't deny it anymore. So that was fun to do. So I really got hung up on trying to word the death is certain, the time of death is uncertain, because death can't be the subject. It has to be, I will die. I will die because, but anyway, I was working on that. Anyway, that's an application that's useful. So, gosh, we did it. Any other thoughts, questions, or concerns on these topics? Okay. I don't know what will happen next week. Is next week May 2nd? No. Venerable's back. Venerable's back. Oh, it's another week that I don't know what's happening. Never mind. Never mind. Okay, next week we start Arya Deva's 400 with Venerable Thupten Chodron. Okay. So let's dedicate. And really, may every being have the opportunity to receive these teachings. Really, may we all crack the code, finally understand what this all means, and help each other get on with it.